In this video, we'll be having a look at Hatshepsut's foreign policy. Foreign policy can be broken down into two key areas, the first being military campaigns, so battles and skirmishes between Egypt and its neighbours, and then also trading expeditions is the second one, where they're peaceful endeavours for mutual wealth between Egypt and its neighbours. In this video, we're really only focusing on military endeavours. We're going to save the trading expeditions for another couple of videos. This is an interesting area of study because it's led to a lot of historical debate, particularly over time. We've seen historians' views change. A couple of key terms. The first is expedition. Expedition really relates to trade, so you might say a trading expedition or a trade expedition. Campaign is the word we want to use here. Campaign relates to the military, so we might say a military campaign. So it's important to use the right terms in our responses in the right contexts. A bit of an overview. The historians who originally were writing about Hatshepsut assumed from a variety of different reasons that she had a campaign that was, a reign that was devoid of any significant military campaigns and that it was very peaceful. Sir Alan Gardner said that she had no military enterprise whatsoever. And this was kind of the dominant debate for quite a long period of time. And probably rests in the fact that many of these historians were a product of their time, so gender bias had a bit of a role to play. And because of the role of women in the time that these men were writing, they couldn't understand how a woman could have had such a significant role and therefore didn't interpret the evidence in that way. We've also seen new evidence arise since these earlier historians were writing, which has really seen a lot of change in the way we understand Hatshepsut's military campaigns. Another historian who sort of suggested that, and he's an earlier historian too, that Hatshepsut's reign was devoid of any military conflict was Eric Hornung. He said there were no significant campaigns and predominantly it was a peaceful reign. It wasn't until we come to Donald Redford that we see a significant change in how the historians understood Hatshepsut's military campaigns. And Donald Redford really pioneered this, and it came down to the fact that he, or the discovery of two key pieces of evidence. One was a graffiti of tea, and the other is a stela of Jehuti. And these are both evidence of Hatshepsut's specific actual campaigns that she undertook. And Redford used these in combination with what evidence we already had to provide a fuller potential picture of Hatshepsut's military campaigns. He even found that potentially Hatshepsut not only ordered military campaigns, that she may have attended them and may even have been on the battlefield at one point as well. So that significantly changes how we understand Hatshepsut's military campaigns. Good little quote from Redford here. The evidence for foreign military campaigns is more plentiful than it's sometimes thought, and it may well be that the reason there is not more is because Thutmose III destroyed it. So linking back to that concept of damnatio memorare, the destruction of the memory, which Thutmose III undertook after Hatshepsut's death, the suggestion that maybe if he hadn't done that, we might have even more evidence of campaigns that Hatshepsut was involved with. Another point from Redford is he really distinguishes between what we call a stock scene and an actual evidence of campaigns. And a stock scene is how a king was expected to represent himself to his people. So it was putting forth the expectation of the king. Say he might describe himself on a scene, decimating the people of the north and south, or that the people of the north and south bow down to him, or he was controlling foreigners, and that was all about maintaining art. But they may not refer to actual specific campaigns. Redford is now sort of looking at these actual evidence of campaigns and these stock scenes and trying to make heads or tail of what campaigns actually did take place and what actually were stock scenes. The actual evidence is when we're actually looking at specific evidence, so when a particular place is mentioned and even perhaps a time period of when it took place or specific details which would tell us that this is actually something that did take place. It's not just a stock scene of the king telling us that that they controlled another group of people. Moving into the stock scenes, a few quick examples. So we have some examples at Dir el-Bahari where Hatshepsut says that she's campaigning against the people of Upper Egypt. Perhaps Kush, we really don't know. And we've got a quote there that it says, as was done by her victorious father, Thutmose I. So she's harking back to her father's victories. And she also says she has destroyed the southern land. So that's, again, nothing specific. So this is why it's considered a stock scene, because it doesn't tell us when this happened or particularly who. We have the speech of Parquet, another piece of evidence which talks about the suppression of foreign lands, but again, very vague, nothing specific. The Red Chapel also talks of the land of Nubia being shown in submission. Again, not specific about who exactly or when this was occurring. And finally, her, or not finally, sorry, coronation, her coronation text. We have Thutmose I, her father, prophesying that Hatshepsut will actually strike down and destroy the Nubians and the retinue. And finally, we have the punch relief, which doesn't in itself isn't a military campaign. It's not a military campaign, it's a trading expedition. But it refers to the fact that she has no enemies to the north or south and that the chiefs bow down to her, which again is a stock scene in that it's indicating her military prowess and power. Moving on to actual campaigns, mentioned before the graffiti of tea, this gives us evidence of campaign in Nubia to the south, and it talks about the overthrowing of the Nubian nomads and actually mentions that the chiefs were being brought to Hatshepsut, which would imply that she was there and may have even been on the battlefield at the end of the battle. Another example for Nubia is the Stela of Jehuti. We have the Hatshepsut collecting booty from Kush, so wealth taken back to Egypt from Kush. Now, this may be referring to the same campaign that we have from the graffiti of tea in Nubia. We don't know. It could be two separate campaigns, could be the same campaign. At Deir el-Bahari, we also have evidence of the text at Deir el-Bahari, also, which may be a stock scene, but may also be referring, well, it is a stock scene because it's not specific, but it also may be referring to this same campaign as well, or a different campaign, we don't know. We also have evidence at Deir el-Bahari for campaigning in Syria-Palestine, and Redford suggests that perhaps she's ordering sort of mopping up operations to clean up an earlier campaign there. Moving on now, we've got to also look at the fact that this was a co-regency, so we have to look at the campaigns that were undertaken while she was a king, but a king in conjunction with Thutmose III. So there are a few campaigns that Thutmose III led during the co-regency, and then obviously he went on and had an even more illustrious career after the co-regency with a big military focus. So in year 13 of his reign, there was evidence of him military engagement in the Sinai, and that's from the Sinai Stela. We have the statue of Anebni, which refers to journeys to the north and the south, and then followed up by a hunt of rhinoceros in the south. We also have the Tumos inscription from year 20, which describes Thutmose III overthrowing people in Upper Nubia. So we have a bit of evidence here for military campaigns. Hatshepsut is still the king during this time, but it's Thutmose III who we know is leading these campaigns. Just finally, a couple of historians' views. We have from Jennifer Lawless, she says that the earlier queens of the 18th dynasty probably did play a military role, so Hatshepsut probably did as well, so it shouldn't be surprising that Hatshepsut was engaged in the military. And finally from Redford, Hatshepsut's military actions were eclipsed by Thutmose III's, but her campaigns were comparable with those who were before her. So there's a bit of an overview of the military involvement or military campaigns of Hatshepsut.